And I'm very pleased to welcome now Sultan Barakat. He's Professor of Public Policy at the Qatar Foundation's Hamad bin Khalifa University and an Honorary Professor at the University of York in the UK. Welcome to DW. If we could start with Iran's immediate neighbours, Turkey has been very vocal, criticising Israel's actions. Pakistan, too, has condemned the Israeli strikes on Iran. To what extent does this conflict pose a threat to the region's security?
I think it does risk spiraling into a serious conflict, not just for the region, but beyond the region. Within the region, of course, Pakistan is most concerned at the moment because Netanyahu has always threatened and has always warned against not just the potential of nuclear program in Iran, but also about Pakistan owning a nuclear weapon. And now, with his close relationship with India, it is not inconceivable that he's also plotting to undermine Pakistan and its nuclear program at some stage. So they have a direct issue to worry about. The rest of the countries, probably less so, but they are equally concerned, particularly those where there is an American presence. If the United States changes its position from being a covert supporter to the Israeli attack to being an explicit partner in the attack. Obviously, all its assets in the region, and they're talking about maybe 40,000 US soldiers, will become legitimate targets for Iran. And that will draw in particularly the Gulf states into the conflict. And most immediately, I think, Iraq. The population in Iraq is almost half, is very sympathetic with the Iranians, and they will probably take action or be more willing to take action than any other population in the Arabian Gulf. Also, it has had already an impact on Ukraine. You know, the fact that Trump left the G7 abruptly has not been ideal from Ukraine's perspective and its immediate concerns. A lot of weapons have already been diverted from the Ukraine war to support Israel. And finally, I think it has an impact on the way the global South perceives the hypocrisy of the North and the Western countries. For example, the German chancellor, for him to say that Israel does the dirty work on our behalf, is quite problematic because he's admitting that this is dirty work. It's not legitimate. It's not in line with international law, but he's willing to condone it and he's willing to go along with it. And as you can see, this coming up on the back of what has been witnessed of genocide in Gaza for the last 2 years would make it much more difficult for the rest of the world to ballot the positioning by the West. Mm-hmm. And of course, from Netanyahu's perspective, what we're finding out more and more at the moment is that, in fact, from day one, his objective has been regime change rather than simply undermining the nuclear program. Given the degree to which he's been able to penetrate the Iranian intelligence, it is not inconceivable that he has already laid the ground for a very sophisticated infrastructure for regime change, mm-hmm. which also the son of the former Shah has come out calling for the Iranian people to rise against the government in concert with the Israeli people.
I wanted to ask you actually about the people in Iran, just on what you were saying there. Mm-hmm. We understand that there are, of course, many Iranians who are against the Iranian regime, but right now they are coming under Israeli fire. Can you tell us how people in Iran are viewing what's happening in their country?
I mean, as you'd expect, maybe at the beginning of the revolution, Iranian people were broadly supportive of what the revolution brought to them. You know, a little bit of equity, freedom, etc., so that they did not enjoy under the Shah's regime. But the problem has been that this revolution got stuck into a revolutionary mood for decades, and they came under sanctions after sanctions and so on. And I think for a lot of people, they see the revolution having lost its way, particularly in the last 2 decades. After the fall of the regime in Iraq, they saw that as an opportunity to expand within the region, and they got themselves involved into conflicts that they should not really have bothered about. They should have given the priority for their own people, conflicts in Iraq, Iraq and Syria and Yemen and Lebanon and so on. So that for a lot of people, I think, is an issue, and they would like to see an end of that. And somehow, practically, this is coming to an end at the moment anyway. The second issue, I think, is the support of the regime to the Palestinians. I think the majority of the population in Iran is supportive of the Palestinians, and they see and they understand the agenda of the Israelis of isolating the Palestinians from any external support, which they've been successful in terms of the Arab states. They've managed literally to isolate them from all the Arab states. The only country that stands by them at the moment is Iran. And I think the last is the issue of the suppression on the ground, that the regime, right from the beginning of the Arab Spring, there were some movements in protest against the heavy-handed approach of the regime in the streets. But I think that has died off with time. Now there's a risk of it reigniting again. So I don't think it's very that the population is with or against. It's a very mixed picture. The longer this attack continues, particularly with it coming from Israel, will actually solidify the communities on the ground, particularly in rural areas, particularly outside the cities, around the regime.
OK. You talked about Gaza earlier, and I did just want to mention that, of course, Israel is saying it is doing this in self-defense. It, of course, rejects the claim of genocide and says it's doing it to protect its own people. Of course, the suffering in Gaza is immeasurable and the war is continuing. Does this new Israeli-Iranian conflict mean that Gaza is being forgotten right now?
It's not being forgotten. The attention is being diverted from Gaza, similar to what happened last autumn when Netanyahu decided to attack Hezbollah. And the way when he decided to trigger those pagers to explode 4,500 bomblets across Lebanon, regardless of who's holding that pager and who's standing by him, or whether he was on an aircraft, whatever, he has undertaken a systematic, I think, act of terrorism in Lebanon to divert attention, and he was successful at the time to divert attention. At the moment, he's under a lot of criticism, particularly on the humanitarian condition of the Palestinians in Gaza. This new agency that he set up, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, with support of the United States, has shown its real colors and is rejected by the international community. And you can see on a daily basis, people are being slaughtered while they're being given the very minimum of food. Is now exposed, and he has another opportunity to divert. And this is how I think the timing of this operation has been selected. Whether he's done it with the approval of Trump or not, it doesn't really matter. I think this, when it comes to Israel, the decision goes beyond the president of the United States. This is a deep state decision within the United States, and at best, Trump can put on a brave face at the moment and pretend as if he knew all about it, that he's been part of this, and it is his decision to go to war with Iran. But I think it goes way deeper than this, and the Israelis, particularly Netanyahu, understand this extremely well.
Sultan Barakat, Professor at the Qatar Foundation's Hamad bin Khalifa University. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate it.
Roger, thank you very much.